Good morning, everyone. This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. We're going to be uniquely today not focusing so much on the pictures, but more than anything else, we're going to be talking a little bit about psychology and performance anxiety. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how not to worry so much if we need to give a presentation. And the simple idea is this: 74% of people would rather die than give a speech. We have to fix this. In other words, what we really need to do is go from sometimes feeling like this: we've got a presentation to give and we're terrified and we're going to hide behind that podium, and begin to take a shift to where we feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more certain about what we're doing, to the point where after we've gotten good at that, we are going to find that giving a presentation is actually one of the most fun things we can do. And the difference between this point and this point, for most of us, looks like a big step, but I want to share with you that it's actually not. So let's take a step back and think about what it means to be a presenter. As we know, we're kind of going on a trip. And what I mean by that is, as presenters, our goal is really simple. It's to help others see what we see. So at the start of our trip, this is us, we're standing down here, and we've got an idea in mind, and we've got our idea kind of put in a little box. And of course, what we want to do with a presentation, and most of these trips, most of these presentations are not ideal because most of them do lie pretty flat. We want to not do presentations like that anymore. What we're going to do from now on is we're going to bend those regular presentations, bend that line up. From now on, all of our presentations are going to be extraordinary. They're going to be presentations where we're having as good a time as our audience is having, and everybody is enjoying the topic and everybody's enjoying the presentation. And you all know this. What's the difference between one of these presentations down here and one of these presentations up here? Well, the difference is pretty simple. A really extraordinary presentation is one that changes people. It changes our audience, certainly, but it also, and this is what we're going to focus on today, it also changes us. A presentation is a two-way street. It is us and our idea sharing that with our audience. And the people that are going to change are, of course, going to be the audience, and it's going to be us as well. And why is that? Because really an extraordinary presentation is more than just about change. And here's a new topic, something we haven't discussed. What it's really about: an extraordinary presentation, any great presentation, more than anything else, is truly about trust. It's not about being clever. It's not about having a better topic than someone else. It's not about captivating our audience. It's about trust. And where does that trust come from? The trust comes from confidence. We are confident in ourselves and in our idea. We are confident in our ability to share that idea with our audience. And our audience is confident in us and therefore confident in the idea that we are sharing with them. And when we have mutual confidence, that's when we get trust, and that's when we truly get an extraordinary presentation. So for the rest of the time that we have this morning, we're going to talk about trust and we're going to talk about confidence. Let's start with a quick little refresher. The three rules of an extraordinary presentation are: number one, we tell the truth. If we lead with the truth, the heart will follow. And rule number two, we tell that truth with a story, because if we lead with a story, then understanding will follow. And rule number three, we tell that story with pictures. Why? Because if we lead with the eye, the rest of the mind will follow. Now, I want to tell you a little story about public speaking where these three rules come from. And like all good visually presented stories, we're going to start by listing out who is involved, some of our characters. This story I want to share with you involves four people. The first one is this gentleman, a guy named Michael Bay, who is a Hollywood director. In fact, he's one of Hollywood's most successful and certainly one of Hollywood's loudest directors. If you think about the movies that Michael Bay has made, he's made all of the Transformers movies, you know, with the big crashing robot cars that come stomping in and smashing entire cities and blowing things up. And what Michael Bay is really known for is massive explosions and tremendous amounts of noise. So Michael Bay is character number one. Character number two is John Travolta, tremendous movie star, all the way back from Saturday Night Fever in the 1970s, all the way up through movies today. John Travolta spent more time on screen than just about anybody. True movie star. Character number three is going to be the incredible singer, a true diva in all the best senses of the word, Adele, who a year and a half ago won 6 Grammy Awards. Unbelievable singer, Adele. And the last character is this guy. Perhaps not so widely recognized because this gentleman, Warren Buffett, is just a business guy. All of our 3 previous characters were trained, seasoned performance professionals. But Warren Buffett, who by the way happens to be the second wealthiest man on earth, right after Bill Gates, and a partner in fact of Bill Gates, Warren Buffett's a little different. So let's look at our 4 characters and get this story out. So here's what the story's about. We've got these 4 characters. Now, one of these people is not like the other. And the one who's different is this guy right here, Warren Buffett. Why? Because Michael Bay, Hollywood director, got on stage in Las Vegas a couple of months ago. He was supposed to give a 12-minute speech. The teleprompter broke. He didn't have his words in front of him, and he totally panicked. It was one of the saddest things you've seen. He said, "I'm sorry," and walked off the stage. John Travolta, during the Academy Awards a couple of months ago, got up to introduce a singer named Idina Menzel, who is known now for singing Let It Go from this breakout movie, Frozen. Completely froze, completely forgot her name, and made up a new name and called her Adele Dazeem, and introduced her to millions of people around the world with the wrong name because John Travolta freaked out on stage. And now let's look at the real Adele for a moment. So the real Adele, unbelievable singer, incredibly talented. You know what? Why have we not heard anything from Adele for the last 18 months? Because after she won her 6 Grammy Awards, Adele went on record to say in public she's going to take a 5-year break from performing because the act of getting on stage is so terrifying for her that she needs to take a 5-year break. Here we have 3 seasoned, trained performance professionals who themselves can't handle anymore being on stage to make a presentation. And then we've got Warren Buffett over here with no training in performance whatsoever, who is an incredibly lucid, charismatic public speaker because he understood something. When he was a child, Warren Buffett knew that he was going to be a business person. That's what he really wanted to do. And he knew that if he was going to be a successful business person, he was going to have to be able to get on stage and share his ideas. What Warren Buffett recognized uniquely among all of those performing professionals is that there is nothing that is more important to our professional success than our ability to speak in public. And yet there is nothing that scares us more than speaking in public. No wonder success is hard. The one thing we most need to be able to do well is the one thing that most of us are so terrified to even try. This is why success is hard. In the spirit of telling you the truth and telling it with a story, I want to tell you my own Las Vegas story. We heard Michael Bay's difficult story, and boy, does my heart have a lot of sympathy for Michael Bay, and I'm going to tell you why. Several years ago, I was living in New York City, and I was working as a graphic designer, and I was really at the top of my game. I worked for a very prestigious company. I had a lot of excellent work to do, and I was working with a lot of excellent clients, and I did feel pretty good about myself. I was on a good career trajectory. I was working for a great company, making good money, and having a good time doing it. And one day, my boss came to me, and my boss, who was a very well-known, very charismatic gentleman in the design profession, someone who spent a lot of time giving speeches about design, came to me and he said, "Hey, Dan, I've got this gig that I'm supposed to do over in Las Vegas tomorrow, but I am not going to be able to make it. So I want you to go and give a speech instead." And I said, "Okay, I can do that. I'm confident." And I said, "Hey, boss, what's the speech supposed to be about?" can I have your notes so I'll give your speech? And he said, I haven't written a speech yet. I was just going to kind of make it up as I got there. And I thought, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. I'm super confident. So what do? I jump on the plane, fly from New York to Las Vegas, and on the plane, when I should, in hindsight, have been thinking about, what am I going to talk about? Who's going to be my audience? What stories do I want to tell? What perspective do I want to share? What takeaways do I want to have? I didn't. I watched an in-flight movie because I was so super confident that I was just going to be able to wing it. The most dangerous term we've ever heard in public speaking. I'll just wing it. This was what was on my mind as I flew to Las Vegas. So sure enough, this was actually going to be a panel presentation, meaning this is me over here, and I'm thinking this is going to be so easy. You know, because all I have to do is run this panel. All I have to do is ask a couple of good questions, kind of roll things along. Maybe I'll tell a couple of funny jokes. Maybe I'll get the audience moving, and then introduce the other people and make them look good. And I thought it's important to make them look good because I could see that the people who were with me on the panel, they were a little nervous. And it never occurred to good old me over here to think, well, why are they nervous? Until the audience came in. And I realized that this was a big, teeming audience, far bigger than anything I expected. And all of a sudden, this big smile that was on my face started to become a little bit of a, uh-oh, I don't think I'm prepared for this, because this audience was a group of experts in this particular design field. And then it was my turn to introduce the panel. The room was quiet. I've got my microphone, and I said, hello, I'm Dan, and I want to... Boop! Nothing came out. I hadn't thought about what I wanted to say. I hadn't thought about who my co-panelists were. I hadn't thought about who this audience was. I had thought, I'm so confident and I'm so good in my design career that I'll just wing it. Sit there for a moment. The sweat comes down. The moment you don't have something to say, the mind starts to panic. And it starts to say, well, what am I going to do now? And listen to this resounding silence coming from the audience. And now I look over at my co-panelists, and they're looking at me, and you better believe they're thinking, WTF, Dan? You're supposed to introduce us and make us look good, and what are you doing? Well, I managed to pull myself together, and with sweat pouring down my brow, managed to say something coherent about, I welcome you to this panel, and we're going to be talking about topic X, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to my co-panelists. And I just looked at them and I said, okay, why don't you take it away? And I sat there for the next 45 minutes trying to get some sense of myself back. And I finally did, but it took me a good half that time, 20 minutes or so, before I was able to formulate some coherent thoughts. But by then it was too late. I did manage to effectively close out the panel, but in my mind, and I'm guessing in the minds of my audience, and in the minds of my co-panelists, this had been a big old failure. A big old thumbs down failure. Because I was not ready. And here's the bad part now. When I went back to New York, I remembered what had happened in Las Vegas. And I started to become increasingly worried. Do I actually know how to present? Do I actually have good ideas? That little tiny failure on the stage in Las Vegas, in my mind, started to grow and grow and grow and grow until it became a sort of a worry. And from a worry it started to become anxiety. And I had to learn how to fight back against what had taken place. And here's what I learned. Presenting is a martial art. Presenting, like John Travolta learned, like Michael Bay learned, like Adele knows, and like Warren Buffett learned. Presenting is not something we just make up on the spot. It's a stance. Presenting is a way of looking at the world in a very particular kind of a way, recognizing what a presentation is all about. It is about, as we said, building that trust. And that trust comes from that confidence. And without the confidence, we don't get the trust. Without the trust, we don't give a good presentation. The confidence comes from a set of tools and training and practice and an attitude that says, I am going to be a presenter and I am going to learn how to do it well, and I can learn how to do it well, and that's where my tools and training and practice come in. Since this difficult story I've told you, over the past 15 years, I have learned how to become a great presenter. I've in fact learned how to become an extraordinary presenter, to the point where I now make most of my living off of getting on stage, the very thing that scared me so much those years ago in Las Vegas, and now doing it to where I absolutely love it. I love it. There is nothing that is more fun than being able to get up there in front of an audience and with an audience and have people change along with us. And I have been doing this, as you all know, that's why the Napkin Academy exists, with an unbelievable array of different organizations, whether it's Google asking me to come in and give another talk, or yes, the National Security Agency, or General Electric, or Boeing, or Motorola, or PayPal, or Deloitte, or IDEO, or banks, Intel, technology companies, consulting companies, the armed forces of the United States, even, yes, even the White House, and share with them how we can use pictures to be so extraordinary. Let's spend the rest of the time that we have talking about these two pieces. Trust. I think there's a myth out there that's taken me years to learn that it's a myth. A lot of people that do public speaking training say, remember, it's always about the audience. Well, you know what? That's barely true, because as we know, if I go in to give a presentation and I'm just thinking about the audience, well, where am I and where is my idea? Of course a good presentation is about the audience, but what it's really about, it is really about the trust that develops between all of the people that are involved in this presentation. And that means it is the trust that exists between me and that audience. It's not just about the audience, nor is it just about me. It is about taking the idea that I want to share, being confident enough in it, confident enough in myself, confident enough in my audience, that we work together to make sure it's an extraordinary presentation. And the way we do that, as we know, is we start by telling the truth. And we know that there are three kinds of truth. There are the truth of the data, what the facts say. There's the truth of our hearts, the things that we believe, and the truth of our heads, the things that we think. And depending, as we know, on the nature of the presentation, our audience, and what we want to achieve, we're going to focus on one of these types of truth. But the truth that is really going to move people the most is when we can help change their heart. When we tell people what we actually believe, we tell them our truth, and people will come to believe it with us. And here's why: because if we lead with the truth, the heart really will follow. And I think there are two great quotes, and I've pulled these from the book Show and Tell because I love them so much, that really make this case better than I could. The first one is from Stephen King, and he says this: "It was one of the best speeches I ever heard because it was the truth rather than horse crap." The best speech is the one that is about the truth. And ladies and gentlemen, we know this. We know when someone is telling us their truth. We know it. And the other beauty of telling the truth is the one that helps us build our own confidence as the presenter. From Mark Twain, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." What a wonderful vote of confidence for someone who's going on stage. If I forget what I was going to say, just tell the truth. I don't have to remember anything. Look, there is no faster way to establish that important trust with our audience than to tell the truth. And there is no faster way to lose our audience than to lie to them. And now let's talk for a moment about how that helps us build the confidence that we need to be an extraordinary presenter. The title of today's talk was How Not to Worry Too Much. It's not how not to worry at all, because in three ways I want to share with you the idea that I've learned that worry in the right amount is actually a good thing. Let's look for just for a moment at some scary words, words that nobody wants to see. Fear, worry, anxiety, panic. On first blush, these all seem to be the same thing, but you know what? They're not. Fear is something that's kind of an innate part of our mind. Fear is what tells us to be prepared for something. I'm afraid of a spider, or if I'm on top of a building, I'm afraid of heights, because my mind is telling me you could die. That spider could kill you. If you fall off, boom, you're going to die. So that's the fear. The fear is a warning. And that by itself is not a bad thing at all. The trouble is, when the fear starts to become worry. Worry is fear projected into the future. Fear says right now our brain is reacting to a difficult situation, a scary situation. Worry is when we're thinking about the fear when we're still on the ground. There's nothing to be afraid of. We haven't even gone upstairs yet. Worry is when we think that we're going to be afraid, so it starts to affect us before we even put ourselves in the position where fear is necessary. Anxiety becomes the warping of the fear to where this fear of worry and fear of fear becomes something that's with us even when we're miles away, perhaps sleeping on our bed at night. And we start to have anxiety about falling off tall buildings when tall buildings are as far away from us physically as we can get. Panic is something also quite different. Panic is an in the moment, when we're up here, the reality. Panic is bad because it stops us from thinking. Panic when we're lying on our bed at night is doubly bad because that becomes the self-feeding loop that says we're going to start to live in a worry of anxiety and increasing panic, driven by initially a rational, normal fear that then takes on a life of its own in our head. And this is the real concern. But I don't want us to be worried. I don't want us to be afraid, because I want to talk for a moment specifically as these apply to this art of making presentations. I want to talk very quickly about something we're going to call the stage fright spectrum. And I think in the simplest possible model, all of us fall into one of three categories when it comes to stage fright. We could be the worrier. What's that mean? We feel anxious the moment someone just asks us to give a presentation. On Friday, do you think you could go up in front of the office and give them a product update? This is fairly common. It's not all of us. Some of us say, yeah, can't wait till Friday. But most of us say, yeah, okay, I'll think about it on Wednesday. A little bit of worry. Then there is the panicker. We feel anxious when we actually get on stage. You know what? This is near universal. And it's for exactly the reason we were talking about. The fear. Where does stage fright come from? It comes from our brain telling us, oh my gosh, I'm in front of a whole bunch of people that are going to be looking at me and judging me. This is a stressful situation. The fear is absolutely justified and normal. What we're going to see is that we can use that fear to help make this better rather than worse. But when the fear just sits there by itself, that's when we become the panicker and we shake and our voice quivers and we become like Dan did in Las Vegas. And then there's the third level on the spectrum, which is the carefree. Ah, what a lucky person. We don't have any anxiety about public speaking. I'll tell you this is actually exceedingly, exceedingly rare. You know, think about John Travolta and Michael Bay. They were both gentlemen who thought, I don't have any anxiety about public speaking. I'll just go up there on stage and I'll wing it. And look what happened to them. So let's talk just quickly. We'll close this out with a little bit of analysis about these three and what do we do about it. The worrier. If we're one of these people that feels anxious with just the whole idea of giving a presentation, let's first of all recognize that this is a very common thing. And let's take a look at what's at stake here. For most of us, worrying, it's a manageable issue that resolves itself through what? Through planning. We'll talk about this in the next session, but worry dissolves instantly on contact with planning. However, if the worry persists and grows over time, it gets into that cycle we looked at a few moments ago. There is no shame whatsoever in seeking professional help. I went to people and I said, can you help me understand what's going on in my mind? And that's where a lot of these ideas came from. The best short-term fix is planning helps us settle our mind, begin to exert control before we're in a fearful situation, and take effective action. all of which are great things to help us alleviate long-term worry. So if we're the worrier, what do? We focus on planning. If we're the panicker, which is universal, all of us are. It's going to happen to every one of us. We will get on stage, we'll get in front of everybody, and we are going to panic. Why? Because neurobiologically, that's what our body is wired to do. That's our first innate response. Stress, I'm going to start to fear. But what we're going to do is we are not going to let the fear become panic. And the way we are making sure that that's not going to happen is practice. What we're going to do is become accustomed to this fear. The fear of stepping onto a stage and the fear of having everyone looking at us is a normal, rational fear. In order to not have it become panic, there's just one thing we need to do. Get used to it. It's not going to go away. We get used to it. Look, our body is exhibiting real and scary physiological symptoms of fear. Practice gives us the confidence to recognize that's all that's happening and address those symptoms, and with time, they will stop. I am fearful every single time I get on the stage. Probably 150 times a year I get on stage in front of audiences of anywhere from 30 to 6,000 people. Every single time, the moment before I step on stage, the fear comes up. And I say, hello, fear. I'm glad you're here because it knows that I'm as prepared as I can be. Thank you, fear, for waking me up, letting me know that I've got to perform. I'm going to get on stage. And by the way, panic, you never happen anymore. Goodbye. And let's look at the third person now, the carefree. This is not me. I do know a few of the people that are like this. Remember my boss in the Las Vegas story? He was one of these carefree people. Wing it. No anxiety whatsoever about public speaking. Exceedingly rare. But what a great place to be. But there is a downside. If we become so cocky that we never prepare, we won't be ready for the unexpected. And in public speaking, the unexpected, Mr. Bay, John Travolta, is guaranteed. So what should we do long term? We should be overjoyed with our luck. Either that or we're lying. But you know what? Practice regardless. 3 last quick thoughts. Channel fear by knowing what it is. The fear comes. We say, hello, fear. I'm used to you. I know what you are. You go right around me. You never become panic that trips me. And here's the big thing to remember. Although the fear is real and it is not going to go away, it isn't a bad thing. On the other side of fear, all fear is our brain reminding us that we're about to do something stressful, and many things stressful, once we get used to them, become fun. Worry dissolves instantly on contact with planning. And we'll talk next time when we meet exactly how to go about planning our presentation. And panic recedes with practice. And again in our next session we'll talk exactly how to practice so that we recognize fear for what it is and make panic simply go away. And the big secret is this. We are all natural born presenters. Presenting is the easiest thing on earth. There's only 3 pieces. There's us, there's our idea, and our audience. Any one of us can juggle 3 things. This is not hard. We were born really good at it. When we were a tiny baby, there was us. We had an idea. We needed something. We were really good at letting our audience know what it was. Now we just need to remember how as grown-ups. There's us, there's our idea, and there's our audience. If we tell the truth, we tell it with story, and we tell that story with pictures, we're going to have a great time. Little bit of homework. This is actually a replay of some homework we did a couple of months back because I think it's appropriate again as we begin to do this quick little section on performance anxiety issues. I would like you to do what I just did. I would like you to dig out of yourself a scary presentation story. I know many of our associates have already provided their stories. I would like to see more of us doing it. It is an incredibly cathartic thing to do. Recall your worst, scariest, most embarrassing, or most disastrous presentation. Draw a little timeline, just as I did. Some little stick figures moving along. Here's what happened, here's what happened, here's what happened. Illustrating the sequence of events. Provide a very brief little narrative caption. Create a little presentation for us. Drawings or PowerPoint. Hey, thank you all for another great lesson. This is Dan signing off from the Napkin Academy, but don't go away. Now on our new platform, you can still submit your homework. Debbie, our community manager, is going to join you right now to show you exactly how to do that. And I really encourage you, do your homework. Okay, take it away, Debbie. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this Napkin Academy classic video. We've made it easier than ever to share your homework. After you've completed your homework and have a JPEG or PNG file saved on your computer, come back to this course. Once you're back here, scroll to the bottom of the screen, and in the comments box, you can add a comment. I'm just going to call this one my homework. You can also add images by clicking on the Insert Edit Image button here. In the source box, click on the file. In the Images window, click on Upload, and then click on Add Files. This is going to take you to your computer where you can search for your images. I'm just going to search for mine in Pictures, and I'm going to choose this image here. You can also add multiple images here. Click Upload. After the upload is complete, click Close. Then scroll down, and you'll see that the last image is here, and it's checked. This is the one we just uploaded. Click Insert. I suggest in the dimensions box you change the maximum to 1200 pixels and leave the constrained proportions box checked. You can also add an image description here if you'd like. Click OK. You'll see that your image has been added to your comment. And now the last step, the most important one, make sure that you click the green comment button here to upload your homework to the Napkin Academy. We hope to see your homework soon.